Yes, hello?
Yeah, I'm just calling for Mr. Montgomery. This is Officer Tate on the Longmont Police Department.
Hey, thanks for giving me a call back so soon here.
Surely.
Sorry, let me get to a quieter place here.
Sure.
Sorry. Darn it. Just let me grab my bag real quick, and I'll talk to you in like 10 seconds.
Okay.
Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
It's just on the side of a road here. It's a little loud.
Oh, yeah.
All right, one second.
Yeah, it's coming through the phone pretty loudly, just so you know. So if I don't know if you're able to move away from traffic.
Yeah, no, I'm on speakerphone too. Just hold on one second.
Sure.
It's always hard to catch you guys live, so I'm gonna hold you until I can talk here. One second.
Okay.
Okay, hopefully this will be a little quieter here.
That sounds better.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so, thanks for calling me back.
Okay, you bet. How can we help you?
All right, so, my brother and I, just get all like the facts out. We were at a King Soopers earlier today, and we were never told by the manager to leave, or we never refused to leave. And so we always have strange confrontations with people in general. We get profiled a lot, and so we started recording things a long time ago. So this is one of those events that we just happened to be recording when he showed up. And so the manager did speak to us very briefly in the lobby there of Starbucks. And however, before the conversation could really begin, it basically ended. He walked away. And so he didn't really want to have that kind of conversation with us. If you can see how that works,
What do you mean, that kind of conversation?
Having to tell someone to leave.
Okay.
You know, just straight up, hey, get out of here. And so, you know, he started off by saying something like, hey, if you guys are going to be causing problems, sorry, it's a lawnmower. Oh, man. Hold on one second. I thought this might be quieter.
Okay.
Sorry. All right, maybe I can talk and walk here at the same time. Okay, so in a nutshell, the manager, his name is Dan, very briefly said to us, if you guys are going to be causing problems, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. But I don't want to do that. And then our exact response was, what do you mean by causing problems? And then that's where he immediately turned around, started walking away. He didn't want to have any sort of conversation with us. We're not really back talking, but if you can imagine someone that doesn't want to have that conversation, just doesn't want to have that conversation. However, like I said, we caught it on audio that we were never actually told the words leave, and definitely that we did not refuse to leave in any way, shape, or form. And so we've seen situations like this before. In this case, since we knew we had every right to still be there until we're told, we went ahead and continued shopping, and then sat down and started eating our meal. And so that's when the police had showed up. A couple of police officers, they had, looks like they had talked to Dan before they approached us. And so what Dan told them, based upon our conversations with them directly thereafter, was that Dan told them that he had told us to leave and that we had refused to leave. Very simple. And from there, in the lobby, we tried to explain it. First, we always ask, are we being detained? Because we're always curious if someone's going to be doing something official or if it's a consensual encounter. And so they said right away that we're being detained for investigation for trespassing. And so, we don't mind that because, people can say things and you guys are just doing investigations. So we don't mind helping you confirm or dispel your suspicions. In this particular situation, I had informed the officer that I had an audio recording of the event that had just happened. And I offered to play it, and he said, I'm not here, you're causing a disturbance, which we weren't. We were just asking questions. But he let us go outside to the parking lot to go ahead and discuss this all further. And so I played him this audio, and his exact response was, well, do you have recordings of 365 days a week, 7 days, or 7 days, 365, 24 kind of thing? If I may interpret this, it kind of looked like he was shifting the burden of proof back to us. My brother and I have seen this a lot, and this is kind of part of our bigger investigation in life of, guilty until proven innocent. And so we don't think that the officer was really ready to see that evidence of the innocence. And so we very quickly, very obviously proved our innocence with the audio. And while an officer can say a couple different things about... Yeah. So it's a piece of evidence. It can be considered proof, but obviously since I didn't have all the audio with me and he wasn't willing to go over it, everything's always taken with a grain of salt on the streets and so forth. However, we got into a very quick argument that basically, to sum it up, he refused to move anywhere else in the investigation, basically stating that whatever they told him he was going to go by, and that we had done something officially enough of a refusal enough for us to be detained so that we could be written a kind of a formal warning, trespass exclusionary order, which we have a big contention with too, because that's not an actual, if it's not a citation, if it's not like someone's writing a ticket for a probable cause, then there's only two places to detain people in general, and that, at least as far as we know, which is reasonable suspicion for an investigation, and then probable cause for a ticket. This was, in the end, and we've seen this before, this is why we're so concerned, was some sort of reason or detention so that they can obtain our identification to issue us this don't come back notice. And so real quick, don't come back notices, they can be given by the owner themselves without any sort of identification. If you see a skateboard on your line, hey, get out of here, and that's it. And then the next time the skateboard comes back, you still don't need their identification. You could just simply call the cops up and say, hey, I saw that skateboarder, I told him to leave, he's back. And then all you guys would have to do is instantly show up, bam, arrest the guy on trespass. Or, obviously do an investigation with reasonable suspicion, ask him if he refused, and so forth and so on. And so basically it was very easy for us to establish with him that we had evidence that was exonerating us, exculpatory information, so to speak. And as a result, he literally said, look, I have to go off of what they said and detain you so we can write you these warnings. And so my very specific contention is that I attempted to report to this officer that this gentleman, Dan, the manager, had falsified information to authorities. That's 18.8.111, and possibly even attempting to influence 18.9.106, through deceit for the purposes of changing the outcome of the officer's investigation. And so when I explained all this to him, they literally kind of hurried up and wrote their warning and then left. And so I still have yet to have something written down or processed or followed up with for this investigation for falsifying information to authorities, because it's 50-50. Either they said the truth or they lied. And if I may finish, I was trying to explain to him that I don't necessarily need all of the audio of like the last day, to show that I've been recording the whole time. We had happened to be recording about 30 minutes prior to that. But I simply asked him, hey, can't you go over to Dan right now and all three of us can sit down, or maybe you could just talk to him and ask him when specifically he had told us those things and that when we had refused. And he just mulled that over, didn't even say anything about it. And so we've seen this before with bad cops that kind of want to retain their investigation. They kind of freeze frame it, and they don't want to do the reverse investigation and start exonerate the innocent and start charging the guiltier. And so this manager totally falsified information to these people, and they turned around and just detained us over it. And we literally tried to stop them with the actual evidence, and they wouldn't do it. And so now it's not just the falsifying information to the authorities that we're having to follow up on this. It's not how to put this. The officers co-conspiring to get out of a false information to authorities charge. Since they wouldn't take the charge, we have followed this many times in other jurisdictions, that could be akin to racketeering activities. And so that's why we're reporting it to, we were going to go straight to internal affairs, but someone said that a sergeant would give us a call back. So here we are with you right now. We have this audio. We would very much like to get it across, and we would very much like to know why he didn't go ahead and at least even open up an investigation on it. So thank you.
Okay. So yeah, with what, so first of all, I'm the one who was just talking to you a little bit ago.
Oh, the older gentleman. Oh, cool.
Yeah. So I kind of understand a little bit, what you're already saying and where you're coming from and everything. And we've talked to each other and we both got along well. And I was professional and courteous to you, and you were the same to me. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not trying to ruffle any feathers or anything. I'm just deeply concerned about my rights.
But what you're saying could be interpreted a lot of different ways. I understand you're not happy with the outcome that took place, but this all has to do with semantics and communication. And it doesn't sound like there was clear communication between the store manager, Dan, and the officer on exactly what was said.
Yeah, which we've seen before. It's like the officer's responsibility to ask clarifying questions and so forth.
But
and that may not have happened.
To go to the level of falsifying information and attempting to influence, those are pretty significant criminal charges. And I can tell you right now, this doesn't meet those elements. Not for that level of charge. There's not the criminal intent there. First of all, it was miscommunication. Did he communicate clearly to the officers what was going on? No, but he didn't.
Well, I would have to say
make something up. I mean, what he said to you.
Yeah, but let's put it this way. I caught the entire event in audio.
I agree that what you're saying, technically,
okay.
He didn't say, according to you, again, I wasn't there, but technically the manager didn't tell you to leave, and you weren't refusing.
Yeah, which is pretty obvious and very rarely would be miscommunicated.
However, he also attempted to make some kind of confrontation. He's not a police officer, and, stores tell their people, they want to control things. He's not used to dealing with people. He's not used to dealing with confrontational situations. He's used to dealing with managerial duties with the store. And he probably felt, hey, I'm not going to get involved in this. Whatever it is, he's not good at confrontation, or that's just not his role in this case. But he probably felt, I made some kind of attempt to talk to this person, and I don't think it went well, and I'm not going to try anymore. I'm just going to call the police. A lot of people do that. We encourage people to do that so things don't get out of hand. And if people aren't able to deal with a confrontational situation, a lot of people aren't. They get emotionally involved.
Well, sure, but I mean,
realize that.
He was pretty clear. I mean, the officer was pretty darn clear.
We'll come out and try to mediate it and make sure things, are communicated clearly, and that we can, help each other out and avoid situations turning into something more than what they need to.
Yeah, no, I completely get you there. Our contention is,
so
on
I wouldn't
one
say
hand,
that was false information, or that he was trying to mislead the authorities in the sense where someone calls a bomb threat and there wasn't one. You know what I mean?
Well, we asked him, I know, and that's why we asked him to clarify with the officer, and he said very specifically that they were told that we were told to leave and that we would refuse to leave. I made sure the officer repeated that. And by the way, I have the entire audio of the entire encounter with the officers on tape, proving that I had given them this information. There was no miscommunication. It was let's put it this way. If there was the kind of miscommunication there, I imagine that would not be something that you would be able to skirt liability for, you would have to drill down or ask questions because it's pretty black and white. Do they refuse or not? And so what I'm trying to say is if you say it's not clear, then between them and between the manager, how are we supposed to be able to be detained or how are we supposed to exercise our rights if we feel as though that is a false imprisonment? Because if we can't get the false imprisonment because you guys have your reasonable suspicion because Dan told you that, and you're saying that that's why you had to detain us was because Dan told you that, what we kept saying was that's wrong for what Dan said, so you would have to go back to Dan, simply ask him. And if Dan says, again, which when you guys say that is vague and so forth, that sounds to me like you have a really easy investigation just to simply go ask Dan real quick. What did Dan say? What did you say specifically to William and David? And so if you guys go back and ask him that, and if he says specifically, yes, I told him to leave this, now you have your chance to compare that to our audio. If for you to say that this is some wishy-washy investigation that really can go anywhere, this can definitely go anywhere, and that's what I was trying to explain to them was, why don't you go talk to Dan right now?
Right.
Yeah, and so...
Mr. Montgomery, can I get you to slow down just a minute?
I'm sorry, it's a lot to get out. I'm out.
With the static on the phone and as rapidly as you're talking, I'm having a hard time even understanding what you're saying.
Sorry about that. It's the wind here. Let me get into a less windy
I
spot.
want to address your concerns.
Sure.
But I'm going to ask you to slow down a little bit. I know you got a lot on your mind. You got a lot to say, but it's going a little too fast for me to hear because of the connection on the phone and for me to take in.
Yeah, that's okay. That's why we taped it all, and it's on YouTube, or the rest of it will be.
Okay.
But yes, it's
So
you may say
what I'm just trying to explain
vague.
to you is
We were given a different
where
story.
I think the officers were at in how they got this call. What was said, the intent from the manager, the overall theme of the communication was he didn't want you there.
Yep, which means that I would not be needing to be detained, right? Because once we start detaining people over investigations...
The officers show up, and we don't expect them to dice apart every conversation. If the person who is in charge of that private property doesn't want someone there, and...
Excuse me. Would you be able to detain every single person that...
The person cooperatively leaves. That's generally the desired outcome with all these, is that we just say, hey, for whatever reason, the manager didn't want to talk to someone, they were scared to talk to someone, they don't think that's their job, whatever it is, when they call for service, we can help them mediate that process and say, what the manager would like here for you is for you to leave.
Yeah, but
regardless of what was said before that.
But if
they
it's
still
just
have the right to say that.
Yeah, no, of course, if it's just general speaking, and by the way, when they started off their conversation with me, the police, they walked in and said, hey, the manager said they don't want you here, they told us to tell you. And so, while that could be one path of the direction to go, the other path kept coming up of, did we refuse, and were we told? And so the reason why we kept going down that path was because they wanted our identification. And so if someone just simply wants to tell someone to leave, that's fine. Or maybe, let's say a business owner doesn't even want to talk to that skateboarder. Like you said, they're not comfortable. You can absolutely go have an officer just mention it to them. But the officer wouldn't have any reasonable suspicion to detain because the person wasn't given a warning. So there's no trespassing investigation.
I can tell you that's standard practice, like I was telling you earlier.
To detain anybody that is told to leave?
Well, I don't know how the conversation went, and again, like we were talking about, you can argue semantics, but in order to put your true and correct name on the document, we call it a warning notice. We have to know who we're dealing with.
Yeah, actually, I beg to differ. That's our whole problem, is that when somebody gets banned from when somebody gets banned, let's just say, King Supers and the skateboarder, and they tell that skateboarder to leave. Hey, get out of here, and that skateboarder just leaves. He just starts leaving, and he's now walking down the street. That would not give you reasonable suspicion to detain them. Like what I'm saying is, anytime you tell someone to leave the property, and they didn't refuse to leave, and they just left, you guys would not be able to go detain them 5 minutes later halfway down the street saying, hey, your business owner told you to leave. We need to get your name. Because the whole point is that when someone is told to leave, they don't need their name. They just need my identity, my physical description. And so whenever I come back, then you could tell the cops, hey, I told this guy to leave.
Then you can arrest him. Then you can get his
you guys would
name.
never ever need our names for a formal warning exclusionary order database
That's
process.
also common practice if someone leaves and the business doesn't want them there.
But what?
If we can locate him, to contact him and say, hey, the business doesn't want you there anymore, and to serve him that warning notice.
Yep, exactly. Now the key word there is
We do
contact. When you contact them, you're just talking to them. You're not detaining them though, because you wouldn't detain them because there's no investigation, because there's no crime.
That's situational. I can't say what would happen. What would
Exactly. That's why it's easy to compare to. What we're saying is,
every situation would be its own unique.
In that situation, there was no crime alleged, and in this situation, there was a crime alleged, and we tried to negate that crime live with exculpatory evidence. And so the cops kept going down the path of, no, man, you were told, and you refused, and that's why we have to detain you, because that way it's under the guise of an investigation with, reason to actually detain us. But I specifically was trying to tell him, hey, this evidence of me not refusing to leave and me not being told to leave, if you take this but then you don't do anything with it and you still detain me, I feel like I was detained over something that was a fizzled out crime that had been dispelled. And basically, what really concerns me was that when I gave him that information, he didn't even go back to the business owner to double check. He actually reiterated, nope, the business owner told me. And he actually said, the business owner told me, they told you to leave, and they told me that you would refuse to leave. And so that's what I was trying to tell him was, we have the audio, you just listen to it right there, And by the way, he was all arguing about the timestamps, like if I had not been recording at that time. And we had been recording, like I said, about 30 or maybe 15 minutes before Dan had ever showed up, and all of our recordings are naturally timestamped by date and time. And so we were trying to show him that too. We literally had the entire event that kind of documented, and he kept on saying like, no, there's nothing I could do, or this, and so all I'm asking for is for you guys to very easily not stay or hang out in this little vague land of we don't know what the business owner said, because you could very easily go back to him and say, so did you really did you tell William to leave?
The specific words, to leave.
And then did they refuse to leave? And if you get first off, if you get a different answer, then that might be a good indication that he was lying the first time around,
or he doesn't know his law.
Yeah, or if he's a very, very specific, because he's going to probably have to follow through with his lie, and that's what we're trying to say is you guys have a pretty free investigation here. You would simply tell him or ask him if that's exactly what his words were, and then you turn right around and you would arrest him because, by the way, you would ask him what date and time and location he said that all, and then he would have to say it was in the lobby 15 minutes prior to the cops showing up. And what we're saying is that we have the audio of that exact event, that actual event, and if you guys don't want to open up that investigation, if you don't want to even look into charging him with falsifying information, I think there is intent there. I think the intent was that he didn't want to remove us, but he wanted somebody else to. And so while it's another issue of business owners telling cops to do things on behalf of them, that's still a regular formal warning process. They would not need to detain us over it, and so it's a false imprisonment.
You're very educated about the law. I was talking to you earlier, and you had a lot of information about case law, and you seem pretty knowledgeable about in particular areas of the law, but the law in general, I think. The issue of intent has to do with that specific crime.
Well, there's general intent. I mean, intent is like if you're knowingly doing it.
Did the manager intend to lie and lead us astray? No.
Well, oh boy, that's a pretty affirmative. That's a pretty affirmative statement. That's their whole investigation.
Maybe not. I don't know.
I mean,
but there's no criminal intent there.
Well, the whole point of intent is not to commit the crime. The intent is to have the outcome happen the way it is.
A situation to him that was probably out of his comfort zone.
Well, if it was vague, then you guys should have had the obligation to clarify, because if you didn't clarify, then you would detain us off of vague, non-reasonable suspicion at that point. What we're trying to say is that there's always a place where liability is checked. And in this case, if you say, well, we don't know what he said, well, where are my rights? Because so I just got detained off of really vague information then, where I would imagine if it's either his responsibility to be clear with the officers and not lie, or it's the officer's responsibility to go ahead and clarify so that they don't go detaining people off of hunches.
Either Dan is stupid and you can't believe someone and he needs to be educated, or he's actually malicious and he was lying to you guys. If he's stupid, you guys still needed to clarify it down the right path, and it still wouldn't have been a detaining over the writing of the warning period.
Yeah, so for an investigation to kind of fizzle out like this, are you saying that we can't go double check with Dan?
Can I speak, please?
I'm sorry, we're done. Thanks.
Take this out of the trespass. Take this out of the context that it's in. If we detain someone, say that there was a crime that just occurred, a liquor store just got held up, and we have a suspect description, a general clothing, we have a clothing description and a general description of what the person's height, weight, hair color, that type of thing is. And we, in a direction of travel, and we see someone who matches that description, and we stop and talk to them. And if they don't want to stop and talk to us, given if this just happened, they're going in the same direction of this person, they look like the person described, we can detain them lawfully. And if they say, I don't want to talk to you, we can make them stay there and talk to us. We can make sure that if they're, for the purposes of trying to identify if they're connected to this crime or not.
Yes, but you're always on the premise of a crime that you've already established.
The wrong person, that wasn't an illegal detention. It was made in good faith based on the information that was available at the time.
Yeah, no, I completely get that. What we're trying to say is it's not fair for a cop to do kind of a vague, half-assed job of not asking the right questions, and it's not really for a manager to go kind of saying wishy-washy things, and then out of that come a very specific, hey, we need to detain you to give you this formal warning because you were told to leave and you refused. And so that vagueness, that should never happen. When you go up and ask a manager, did you tell him to leave? They're pretty much going to say yes or no. And so you this insertion of like a vagueness area, it sounds to me like that would be exactly what you could very easily go unvague. Just go ask him. Go ask Dan again. Or what I'm concerned about is there might actually be video footage or audio footage of the cops there. Some of them have body cams now, or at least their cell phones. And so, like for you guys to say that your hands are tied and there's nothing you can do, when somebody lies, and if you compare it to the audio, the intent was to perform the act. It doesn't mean if the intent is to actually the specific intent for attempted influence might have.
What you're saying,
but yeah, it was a fabrication. It was either lie and it was vague, or if it was specific, you guys didn't do your job or he didn't do his job, and we got falsely imprisoned out of it because we have the proof. Simply put, that we were never told, and so we never.
Mr. Montgomery,
yeah. So
I understand what you're saying. I don't happen to agree with it. Based on my training and experience in doing this job, you are more than welcome, though, to come down to the front desk and ask for a complaint form and file that complaint, and it will get looked into.
No, we get that. Well, we're really behind on our paperwork. We're trying to get like 30 of these types of things out, like I was saying. In the meantime, I kid you not, the exact same thing happened at McDonald's, and that's why we're so concerned, is because we're in the same boat. They lied, which we have on audio tape. They never told us to leave.
Never told me specifically.
Never told David.
Cop detained me over the same issue.
And nobody refused. And then, of course, cops claim every time that they came out and talked to us, hey, we had to take the other side, man. They told us that you refused. And it's like, you guys don't have to take their side, but if you choose to take their side, then you're taking some sort of side, which sounds to me like it's specific enough. And it sounds to me like both situations, you guys had clarified that we were told and that we refused. And what we're saying is, if that's your position and as to why you have the reasonable suspicion to detain us for writing some warnings, what we're saying is you either have that reasonable suspicion and the person is not lying, or you have that reasonable suspicion, but now you have to go charge them with falsifying information, because in the end, if the people had not said that, then we would not have been detained.
It's the equivalent of your liquor store theory. It's like a liquor store that lies over a person they actually hate very personally. that he robbed, and then therefore there's actually no evidence of any crime. So if you were to go detain and not get both sides, that guy was innocently bought his alcohol. And we always agree that if there's a crime or a body.
However, in my liquor store theory, the robbery happened.
And here nothing allegedly happened.
No robbery happened. What you're talking about is no robbery happening.
No, what we're saying is no crime whatsoever.
But it's still not an illegal detention. We're acting on good faith.
Well, when you say that, let's put it this way. When you guys ask questions of an investigation, it sounded to me like he came back with pretty clear answers that we were told to leave and that we refused. So if he came back and said, well, the business owner just didn't want you there, or he didn't really know and it was vague and stuff like that, what we're saying is these aren't those situations. This was very specific. The business owner, if you go back to the business owner right now and ask him, hey man, did you tell them to leave? Tell them?
Did you tell them the word? Leave now? Because
those things are not the kinds of things that, even if it's intent or not, what we're saying is if you're not clear enough, then that's not a good answer. And if they lied, that's not a good answer. And there's always a way to due process and prove it either way. That's what we're saying.
It's like a new Asian business owner.
Like I said, what I believe you're dealing with is unclear communication.
Oh, exactly. That would be your investigation.
Intentional effort to mislead us.
Well,
their effort was to try to get you all to leave.
If
they
you're
weren't good at it, and so they called us, hoping we would be better at it.
No, absolutely, and that's
we usually deal with on these are people who are intoxicated, sometimes belligerent.
Sure, no,
store managers deal with that, so I understand if they don't want to get into a confrontation.
Yeah, we're not disagreeing with that.
We're not disagreeing with that.
We're saying that they very specifically told us that we refused to leave. That's a very different story. It's very easily due processable. We can go ask him again, and he's going to say something either clear or vague. And the whole point is if he comes back and says, oh, I didn't actually tell him to leave, well, then why on earth was that not investigated more thoroughly in the first place? What kind of questions are you asking the business owners? Because what we're trying to say is if that's the type of situation where you're saying where it's like, the business owner doesn't want to come talk and they want to have the cops come talk, that's fine. We don't mind be told by cops to leave.
We agree with that as well.
But we don't like being detained for investigations of refusing to leave.
We could have just left. The cops literally could have just told us that the manager doesn't want us there. They're scared of us, and we would have left. What we're talking about is the detaining of where our Fourth Amendment seizure rights came into play.
And so
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
And like I said, you are more than welcome to come down and file a complaint. You can come to the front desk and get complaint papers and file a complaint.
Well, yeah. What we're going to have to do is get the audio of the dispatch to see what he said there. And I don't know if the officer can I don't know if he's going to have a report, but if you could make sure that the officer there makes an actual physical report. We were trying to get them to write things down on our tickets, and they wouldn't do that. And so we're just trying to drill down, was he told the correct information or not? Because what we're saying is you guys and Dan don't have some sort of luxury of getting a wishy-washy, vague situation out of that. When you detain somebody, you got to have articulate, reasonable suspicion. And if you're saying wishy-washy, then why were we detained? And so what we're saying is it wasn't wishy-washy. It was pretty clear. But then if it's pretty clear, then you say, oh, he's just mistaken. Well, when he's mistaken...
I understand what you're saying. Like I said,
let's put it this way. People lie all the time. And the intent...
Your recourse is to come and file a formal complaint.
Yeah, that's I know.
We always know.
We always
that's
do that.
The next step.
We just hoped that there would be still room left for you guys to just go take my audio and go compare it to what Dan said, because there's still we shouldn't have to file a complaint for you guys to at least further investigate the falsifying information charge. You say that it was vague. That's an assumption. That means that are you going to just end your investigation right there?
I'm not saying that's not going to happen. I am telling you what your recourse is.
Oh, no, yeah, I kind of get you there. No, I do. If the officers are going to claim that they did their job, we're going to have to obviously claim that they didn't, and we're going to have to go from there. And so we're just really concerned And like I said, if you wanted to go look at a similar example online, the McDonald's is a very good example.
I don't, and I've talked to you, so
You know.
I know where this is. I mean,
So
we
it's
talked at length earlier, so I know a lot of what you're going to say. I don't
Yeah.
want to shut you off.
well, no, it's basically how do we protect ourselves from cops coming up and falsely imprisoning us off of either vague information that they didn't clarify or false information that they didn't double check. Do you see how there's got to be a protection in there somewhere?
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah,
and,
that's all.
And you've got that recourse. It's completely wide open
Yeah.
to you, okay?
Well, yeah, and in this case, it is a complaint against the officer. I provided him information enough to follow up with an investigation, and he literally said, "I can't take that."
I'm going to notify this officer's supervisor as well as the supervisors that he works with, and they can look into the particulars of it. But if you, like I said, you have the recourse of filing a formal complaint.
Yep, and you guys have the recourse of going and talking to Dan right now, and you don't need us to charge him. You wouldn't. You literally, you could go back and ask him very specifically, and if he says the exact same thing, yeah, I specifically told him, here, and here, then I think that covers your intent, the intent to commit the act.
The protection is if there's a dumb business owner like an Asian, new Asian
I
person,
heard
they
you
can
out.
give vague stuff, and you guys can take vague stuff.
Yeah, so you guys know you can't take vague stuff. That's why you probably do pretty good jobs asking questions and so forth. And so I just
try
don't...
to do our best, you know.
Yeah.
And like I told you earlier, it's a difficult job, and communication's key. And I wish people communicated crystal clear to us all the time, and we had absolutely no question about what the intent was and what the meaning was. But that doesn't always happen. And in fact, it rarely happens.
Yeah,
So
exactly, and that's actually...
we try to do the best we can and make good faith efforts, and try to do the best by everybody we contact.
Yeah, no, and...
yourself included.
While that's true, what we're ultimately trying to say, let's sum it up this way. I'm glad you touched on that. What we're concerned about is where possibly cops think that they don't have to worry about as much liability is if they don't do as full of an investigation. If they just kind of stop shy of just like a real simple, vague investigation, they can say, well, I never knew. And it's because you didn't ask those clarifying questions. And so an officer can lose probable cause or not have it in the first place or reasonable suspicion very easily by not performing what's considered a minimal level of investigation. And so the minimal level of investigation is obviously there to exonerate the innocent as well as to confirm the guilty. And so we don't like how some cops have this sweet spot where they think, oh, well, it was a miscommunication or vague and things like that. No, it can never be like that because you can ask as many clarifying questions as you want on your end for your investigation. And so I don't think the investigation's over with Dan. I think if you guys didn't want to pursue that, if you guys are going to wait for my complaint's probably going to be that you guys are co-conspiring with Dan to not investigate him, because you definitely don't need me for that.
Okay.
So
and like I said, I didn't say we weren't.
yeah, no, actually, yeah, I think we're doing okay. I think you said that you're going to contact their supervisors. That'd be much appreciated. We're just trying to get maybe a statement. Just ask Dan for a statement. That way he'd have to write it down on paper and perjure if he's there. I just don't like this whole we can't ask him because we don't need to or this or that. It's like leaving the investigation in this little vague zone where there's no liability, but that's the liability.
It's like a mall property line to get rid of a skateboarder. I hate to say it, but people like to lie to cops because they think that they can get out of it because they're rich or something. He's a rich business owner.
Yeah, and so this idea of vagueness of, we couldn't figure out if he was lying or not. No, you could ask him straight up and ask all sorts of details. And, if he says like, yeah, I told them over here and this and this and this, if you compare it to the audio, I don't know what else is falsifying. By the way, falsifying information to authorities actually doesn't have a specific intent requirement. It just has general intent. And it just says right here, a person commits false reporting to authorities if he or she... No, you're right. There's the knowingly part. But if you're making up stuff, then you're kind of knowingly... I mean, if you're really making up very specific, articulatable lies, then you're knowingly. And or whatever, it's challengeable. But it would be makes a report or knowingly causes the transmission of a report to law enforcement authorities of a crime or other incident within their official concern when he or she knows that it did not occur. And so, I don't think Dan could be mistaken of like, oh, I thought I told him, or he either told us or he didn't. That's like one of those things that nobody makes mistakes on.
He was very not clear about it.
Yeah, and so with us, he literally turned around and walked away, and didn't say anything at all to us of leave now or anything like that. It was so black. It's just so black and white.
Because we wait for the phrase. It's so easy. Boom, gone. We
actually prefer that phrase as like a due process stage to move on with. And so, we hate this wishy-washy. And, we're just, this time, we had the evidence there, literally, to show to the officer, and he literally was like, nope, sorry, I have to take their word for it. He literally said that to me. I have to take their word over audio of the event. So it's really bad. We don't know how else to prove our innocence in this guilty until proven innocent state.
I wish we always had crystal clear communication with everybody. And if you guys, see something in an area where we can provide service better and do things better, we appreciate that.
If there's ever
something,
I swear, if there's only one place that I think you guys could do a better job that would save probably half our time, is if you guys had your body cams on when you go talk to the people who call. Because you can get their side of the story. Because every time this happens, we have our side, but their side is just hearsay. And so if you guys recorded both sides, you would pretty quickly see who's telling the truth and who's not.
Right.
And so nobody was recording that side.
I understand your point.
So, I appreciate this. Thanks for working with us.
Have a good night. I'm gonna end the call because other things I've got.
No, absolutely. Yeah. We've beaten a dead horse.
Good night.
But really, go online. It's very, very clear online too. Thanks, man. Talk to you later.